Hello, welcome to the Life Science Rundown, the podcast where we discuss current regulatory complexities facing the life science industry and explore innovative ways to overcome those challenges. I am your host, Nicholas Catman, President and CEO of the FDA Group. Before we get started, here's a quick word about who we are. The FDA Group is a technology and consulting firm that helps life science companies in the areas of regulatory submissions, audit projects, mock inspections, staff augmentation, and remediation. So if you ever find yourself in need, just head over to the fdagroup.com to check us out and get in touch. So what we're going to be talking about today is how can the life science industry overcome the dual challenges of regulatory uncertainty and reimbursement barriers that are stifling innovation and investment in kidney disease drug development while building on recent FDA and CMS success to create a more sustainable path forward. So today I have President and CEO John Butler from Akebia Therapeutics. Hey, John, how are you doing today?
Great, Nicholas. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So before we jump into the podcast, would you kindly introduce yourself?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I'm the president and CEO of Akebia Therapeutics. We are a purpose-driven company, and our purpose is to better the lives of people living with kidney disease. I've been the CEO here for just over 12 years now. We have two commercial products, both that serve dialysis patients today. Auryxia phosphate binder and Vafseo are our newest product, HIF-PHI for anemia in chronic kidney disease. I've been working in dialysis and kidney disease since 1991. I was at Amgen in a commercial role shortly after the introduction of Epogen. I saw the impact this made on patients' lives. I moved from Amgen to Genzyme, spent about 13 years there, much of it in the renal division, bringing innovative products to patients on dialysis. My last couple of years there was running the rare disease business, so I also have experience on the rare disease side. And I think we're going to talk a lot about rare disease, kidney development, kidney product development here as well. My roots in kidney disease are deep. I also chaired the American Kidney Fund, one of the leading patient advocacy groups. I'm still on the board there. I am highly invested in bringing innovative products to patients with kidney disease.
Excellent. Well, certainly a qualified voice for this podcast. So let's jump right in. So, how would you describe the current state of innovation in kidney disease today, and in particular, the contrast between progress in rare kidney disease drugs and the relevant lack of innovation in dialysis?
It's a great question to start, Nicholas, and it really is kind of a tale of two cities, right? I mean, you're seeing real innovation in rare kidney disease products, the product development, where in dialysis it's a desert to a large extent. There are very, very few innovative products in development today. I mean, I think there are about 400 plus phase three programs going on now for oncology programs.
Oh,
There is
okay.
one phase three program going on for a product in dialysis.
Okay.
It really is, it's exciting to see this on the rare disease side. We at Akebia have a number, we have two different rare disease assets, one in the clinic and one is about to go into the clinic, as well as our dialysis offerings that are commercial. But it's frustrating to see, that dialysis has so much less investment.
Okay. Well, let's dig into that a little bit deeper. So, because we're talking about two different things, we're talking about rare kidney disease treatment and also dialysis. So, what are the main forces driving innovation in rare kidney diseases? And what are the key forces holding back innovation in dialysis?
Yeah. So if I go back, kind of think back 10 or 15 years, I was running the renal business at Genzyme, and we were desperately trying to build a development stage pipeline to support our commercial business. And there simply wasn't a lot of innovative products out there. And that has changed so significantly over the last 5 to 10 years, which is great to see. And I think much of that has changed because of regulatory action. I mean,
Okay.
I think IgA nephropathy is the poster child for how this can work, right? Where there was really no development in IgAN previously. The industry worked with FDA on defining a clear path to approvability, and with that path identified, you saw this proliferation of products for IgAN. I think there are 4 or 5 that are approved today, and another number of others that are in the queue or in late stage development. So it really has to do with having clarity from the regulatory authorities. And 15 years ago, you didn't have that clarity. Was pure proteinuria truly an approvable endpoint? You were looking at these very long, very large trials that simply made it difficult to make investments. Now, with FDA, really working with um, the industry, the academics, et cetera, that's really changed the environment significantly.
Mm. So on that point, is there anything else that you could add in terms of the pathways for kidney disease drugs, in terms of clarity from FDA, and what other regulatory uncertainty is preventing investment? Is it, endpoints, trial design, post-approval expectations? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
So, um, the a number of years ago, the ASN and FDA together created what's called the Kidney Health Initiative.
Hmm.
And this is a partnership with industry where this group gets together and discusses all of these issues, and works towards a solution for them. So I mean, it's certainly not a panacea by any stretch,
Mm.
but it really is it has made great strides. As I mentioned with IgAN, there's also a group, the Parasol group, that's doing the same thing around FSGS, focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, another rare kidney disease, which we're seeing significant numbers of products um, in development. Nothing's been approved yet for that disease, but a number of things in the queue. On the other side, there's there have been inconsistencies with FDA and their approach to approving products. We at Akebia went through a CRL for our product Vafseo, that we disagreed with the outcome, that the FDA, the CRL, and the rationale for the CRL that FDA came up with.
Hmm.
We worked through a formal dispute resolution, which is great that this exists. Before this, 30 years in the business, I didn't know there was a formal dispute resolution process. We were able to use it successfully
Hmm.
and have the product approved for dialysis patients. There's
Wow.
another company, Ardelyx, that had a product, Exfosa, another very innovative product for phosphorus management. They also went through there. Now Vafseo, one of the areas that I think is worth discussing is because our product is for anemia, we're not even being reviewed by the cardiorenal division. We're being reviewed by the non-malignant hematology division, which is very difficult for a nephrology drug. When
Hmm.
you have a bunch of hematologists who are reviewing your drug and no one who knows anything about dialysis, it makes that review process much more challenging.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, now Ardelyx had Exfosa. They were being reviewed by cardiorenal, but it did seem like the the um, uh, the finish line kind of moved on them. I was obviously not that directly involved, but they went through a formal dispute resolution process and also ultimately got the product approved and are marketing it. But that idea that there's this question when you get outside of rare diseases as to what's the path for approval, is the bar going to move? That really gives pause to investors around making investments. It's like investors are very willing to take the clinical risk. Does something work or not? But once it
Right.
works, you want to believe that A, there's a clear path to approval, and
Hmm.
B, there's a clear path to payment.
Right.
And both of those in different situations uh, offer challenges, which is, I think, one of the reasons also why the investment has moved towards the rare kidney space. Which is, again, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be that investment there. I'd just like to see it be broader.
Right, right. Well, so on the point of payment, right? Can you unpack how CMS's dialysis payment structure, especially the bundle, how that can affect investment decisions, and how does that compare to payment models in other areas, for example, oncology?
Yeah, so dialysis reimbursement is incredibly unique. We could spend 45 minutes just talking about that, right? And I will try not to I'll try not to do that to your listeners. But as you referenced, there is a dialysis bundle, and the bundle was created back in 2010 to take all of the services that a dialysis provider uses, and dialysis patients are dialyzed 3 times a week, so 156 times a year. So I'll sometimes talk in terms of per dialysis session because that's the way reimbursement is done. So they have to provide 4 hours of pretty intense medical care, all of the supplies associated with it, and all of the drugs associated with dialysis, all included in one payment number. And this is for Medicare fee-for-service patients, and that's about $280 3 times a week for a dialysis patient. And you think about 4 hours of intense medical care for $280,
It's
that's a
pretty
pretty good
good.
price, right? That's a
Yeah,
pretty good price. So the idea that you have to include all of the drugs on top of that
yeah, that's
really
tough.
make it very, very challenging. If you're a provider and you think about, I need to also offer a new product on top of it,
Right,
you can't do it. They
right.
can't do it. And it just becomes difficult when you think about it. So when I joined Akebia in 2013, we were only developing our product for the non-dialysis population, where it's a much more straightforward Part D commercial
Right.
payment structure.
Hmm.
We weren't doing it for dialysis. I said, well, you can't have a product that's available until they get to dialysis and not after.
Mm.
So, I got the board to agree that we needed to expand to the dialysis population. The reason they weren't doing it was they simply didn't know how it was going to get paid for. And we can talk about some of the payment structures that CMS has put in place to try to deal with that issue. That just they were a great start, but they're just not enough.
Mm.
But again, a great start. We're continuing to work to try to improve it.
So there's something called the Kidney Care Access Protection Act, or KCAPA, and I know that's been put forward as a way to address some of the dialysis payment barriers. So what would KCAPA actually change in practice? Is it enough? Is it just a first step? And would it create a more innovation-friendly environment?
Yeah. So CMS recognized in about 2019 that they simply they agreed with the concept that you just don't have an opportunity to add innovative drugs to a $280 bundle. So they created something called TDAPA, a transitional drug add-on payment adjustment. This is what I mean by we could go
Right,
on for 45
right,
minutes.
right, right, right.
So TDAPA is an ability for dialysis providers to use an innovative drug outside of the bundle, so get paid on an ASP, on an average selling price basis, outside of
Okay.
the bundle for 2 years. And then after the 2 years, they look at what was used and they divide those dollars across every single dialysis session that's done. They just peanut butter it across every dialysis session. So, like many things the government does, right? Great in theory, difficult in practice.
Okay.
So, the first drug that came in was a drug called Korsuva from a company called Cara Therapeutics. This is for uremic pruritus, which is itching. And this is not itching like, oh, my skin is dry. This is intense itching that maybe 10% of dialysis patients have, 50,000 or so, where they want to almost scratch their skin on.
Oh gosh.
And so charged a very reasonable price for it. Um, but no doctors used it during the TDAPA period because they said, I can't give it to a patient for 2 years and then take it away from them
Oh God.
at the end because there's no payment. So
Well,
basically,
you should
nobody
hope
used the
for the
product.
future.
No hope for the future, right? So,
Well, I mean, you should hope for the
of
future. I mean, I
course,
would almost say put it on them for 2 years and hope that there's some sort of loophole.
I think that I wouldn't disagree with you at
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
But that's not the way physicians looked at it, right?
fine.
And so it hardly was used. That peanut butter approach was 11 cents. So the product cost $27 per dialysis session, which for 50,000 patients, this is almost a rare disease drug, right? I mean, it's a
Right.
very reasonable price. But you have, as a dialysis provider, I've got to dialyze 250 patients at 11 cents per to be able to treat one patient.
Mm,
Well, the average dialysis center only has 60 or 70 patients. It's impossible. So the
mm.
product wasn't used. Cara Therapeutics basically wound down their business, reverse merged into another company. And this is a cautionary tale for innovation in dialysis, right? So long way to get to K-Kappa. But K-Kappa was a bill that was introduced, that has been introduced in both the Senate and the House. And it's what it's trying to do is take that 2 years of TDAPA and make it 3 years. Every other Medicare special payment program is a 3-year program, so that's it's more like physicians don't figure out how to use a product in 2 years, right? It takes them
Hmm.
longer. Um, and even more importantly, it takes those dollars that they were going to peanut butter over every dialysis session, and it only pays the dialysis provider when they use the product. So it's at a
Okay.
discount, so the government gets a discount, but they only use it when they only get paid when they use the product.
Hmm.
And we think this is a very important way to drive innovation, right? If I'm sitting back, in my seat in 2013 and the board says, well, how are we going to get paid
Right.
for the drug? I can say, well, for 3 years, we're going to get this ASP plus zero. And after that, well, we'll have to give a discount. There's a long-term funding for the product.
Hmm.
And, we're excited about it. The health subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee held a hearing about 2 weeks ago, towards the 23rd, I think, of March, and and they were talking about
23rd of
prevention
March this year.
this year, just a couple of
Yeah.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or 1 week
Um,
ago.
yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
I was one of the folks who testified there, and my focus was uh, on K-Kappa, TDAPA, and driving more innovation into dialysis. And I was really encouraged. It's the first time that there's been a hearing on dialysis in at least 20 years.
And they listened.
Uh, I'm sorry.
And they listened.
And they listened. They absolutely listened. I mean, look, we're not in what I would describe as the most functional congressional world here,
No.
but the feeling that this K-Kappa bill could potentially, from a legislative perspective, solve this problem. And you said, is this one step? Is this the ultimate solution? I think the ultimate solution is to go away from this bundled payment, at
Okay.
least from the perspective of drugs, that drugs have, the ability to be used when patients need them.
Hmm.
The thing is, dialysis. You have guests on here all the time talking about, we're talking about even rare diseases. Everything is becoming more and more personalized in medicine,
For
right? I
sure.
mean,
For sure.
small patient groups who might benefit from a genetic therapeutic, et cetera. Dialysis is the only area of medicine where treating everyone the same is the most cost efficient way of providing care, especially at the price that they're getting. So the idea that, with this bundled payment, reducing costs as much as possible, which means usually giving patients as little care as possible,
Hmm.
as little innovation as possible, is the way for a dialysis provider to stay in business. That's at odds with every other aspect of medicine today. So,
Yeah.
so KCAP is a first step
Okay.
towards that, but one that, when you think about the timeline for bringing new products, from kind of research to the bedside, um, it's a good first step for people to say, hey, there is a sustained reimbursement path. Remember, I said investors are willing to take the clinical risk. If you can get the product approved, it needs to be paid for. And K-Kappa would create an environment where a drug for a dialysis patient could be paid for over the long haul.
Yeah, and the risk reward benefit structure doesn't just disappear because we're treating patients. It's just a fact of life. And so higher risk means you're going to have higher reward and vice versa. So
Correct.
either decrease the barrier or increase the payment. It's got to be, I guess,
That's
one of
right.
the two.
That's that's a very clear way of saying it, and that's just
Yeah.
not the way. That's not the way they think in dialysis, or at least the CMS in dialysis. But again, I'm encouraged that they created TDAPA at all.
Hmm.
Um, I think you create things, you see how they work.
Right.
This one hasn't worked well, so let's make the adjustments we need to accomplish the aim that we had. And remember, from a government perspective, if you're taking the same pot of dollars and peanut buttering it out, or you're taking that pot and dividing it only when the patient uses it, well, in essence, the cost doesn't change. You're not
Right.
adding cost to the system.
Right.
So, that's an
Well,
important argument
I would
for
argue
Congress.
that the, pay per use is a more, I don't know if meritorious is the correct word, but
Yeah.
more reasonable way of
Yeah.
handling that. But
Yeah.
there's also been discussions around misalignments between FDA approval decisions and CMS coverage and payment decisions. Um, can you speak on that? And if this misalignment is something that you've seen and experienced, what are some practical steps that you think the FDA and CMS could take to better coordinate?
Yeah. I mean, I think that FDA and CMS have generally not tried to coordinate,
Mm,
and I think that's best when they're not trying to coordinate. I think FDA decisions should be around,
science?
the benefit risk of a product and not the potential cost to the system.
Hmm.
So, I think, what you see in kidney disease drugs now with FDA focusing on defining paths for approval for these rare kidney diseases, not being, I've heard them described as being very academic and not pragmatic. And I think we're seeing more pragmatism, come into FDA, which some divisions, oncology, I think is maybe the best to point to, has always been,
Right.
very pragmatic.
I agree.
We're seeing more of that from cardiorenal today. Elisa Thompson, who's the division director, is very engaged with ASM, with the KHI, with industry appropriately. Um, so kind of focusing on that benefit risk, I think makes sense. CMS has this very unique. Remember, dialysis is such a unique um, thing. I mean, the last time that there really was a significant hearing on dialysis was in 1972.
I knew
Uh,
that.
that was when, I mean, 1972, they actually dialyzed a patient on the floor of Congress in the room that I was able to, have the honor of testifying in a couple of weeks ago. And that's how they decided to enlarge the dialysis program. If you're a dialysis patient, regardless of your age, you have access to Medicare. So but then it grew from there. So it's a very large program from a dollars perspective, with a very unique situation, right? Where you're dialyzing these patients in a market where 80% of the patients are dialyzed by two dialysis providers, Fresenius or DaVita. So there's a lot of uniqueness there um, that I think that CMS, most of the time when we talk to folks, you sort of want to blow it up and start over again,
Mm.
right? From a payment structure standpoint, very, very difficult to do that, right? And I'm not sure people have the appetite to do that today. I would love to be more involved in that, because I think there are ways that CMS could focus on that, changing that would encourage that innovation that we talked about, and would just also encourage more individualized patient care than you see in in the market today.
Yep, makes sense. Green shoots in rare kidney disease and headwinds in dialysis. It's a mixed environment. How are companies adapting? What kind of assets, trial designs, and evidence strategies are investors and boards actually willing to back today?
I mean, the reality is, the way things are, kind of March 29th or 30th, 2026, you're not seeing significant investment in dialysis. And that's something, I'd like to see changed. But even Akebia, part of our corporate strategy is to move upstream from dialysis to uh, rare kidney disease or other kidney diseases, impacting other kidney diseases before a patient gets to dialysis.
Okay.
Now, this is obviously the best thing for a patient also,
Of
right? You treat
course. Right.
their rare kidney disease. You look at things like SGLT2s, GLP-1s. I mean, all of these things will have a growing impact on slowing progression to dialysis. It's really interesting today. Now, part of this is kind of a negative reason, right? That COVID did, disproportionately impact mortality in patients who were very sick who might have made their way to dialysis. But you're also seeing things like SGLT2s slow the progression to dialysis, and so dialysis is growing at a much slower rate than you've seen in the past. um, I think from a therapeutic standpoint, focusing on that is where people are making investments today. I
Hmm.
think if we can get KCAPA passed, get permanent funding in place for innovation, there are areas of innovation for dialysis patients in the overall care of them, symptom control, et cetera, that still could be very, very important to address. So that's where I hope
Mm.
things are going. But today, not inappropriately, you're seeing more companies do what Akebia is doing, which is investing upstream. And
Yeah.
it's in another way, it's a golden age of investment in kidney disease therapeutics. And I give FDA a lot of credit for defining endpoints in a way that those investments could be made with confidence.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about FDA, CMS, drug developers, patients. Let's talk about some of the other stakeholders in the process. So, patient advocacy groups, clinicians, dialysis providers, health systems. What can some of these other stakeholders do in reshaping both the regulatory and reimbursement framework so that we can get more meaningful innovation?
Yeah, well, we've seen how important patient voices can be in other areas, right? And they've been very important in kidney disease too. I sit on the board of the American Kidney Fund, which is the largest patient-focused charitable organization in the country. But the NKF, the AAKP, Renal Support Network, I mean, all of these voices they have to continue to raise them in support of their patients, right? And not just um, kind of providing financial aid or benefits, et cetera, but really be involved in the legislative process, which all of them are, and they are absolute advocates. I mean, KCAPA happened because of a group called Kidney Care Partners, which is a lobbying organization that consists of manufacturers like us, dialysis providers, physician groups like ASN and RPA, and all of the patient organizations, or almost all of the patient organizations, are part of KCP. Also, I chaired KCP for about 4 years, and we drove this very important innovation agenda. And it's those patient groups that are in front of Congress talking about KCAPA as much as anyone from the industry is, because they're the ones who ultimately benefit from that innovation. But it's nice to have an organization like KCP, because when you go to the Hill and you have something that has KCP support, it
Hmm.
means the entire community has put their stamp of approval on something that's being brought forward, and that makes legislators, regulators' lives a lot easier when they know this is something that the whole industry supports.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. Can you paint a picture for the audience on what a sustainable path forward for kidney disease innovation would look like over the next 5 to 10 years, for both rare diseases and dialysis? And what would you say are two or three changes in the next few years that would make the most difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing the path that we're on now, and for the non-dialysis population, I think we're on the right path, right? I mean, I think we've got great alignment with through the Kidney Health Initiative and other initiatives like it for the right endpoints in rare kidney diseases. You've got products like the GLP-1s that are they're doing more and more work to show that you can slow the progression to kidney failure and keep people off of dialysis longer. So I think I would love to see more of the same. I think there are tremendous opportunities still to invest in kidney disease for early stage venture-backed companies, and you're seeing that more and more. Where 10, 15 years ago there were a handful, now there's a really significant number doing that, and I think that's great for the ecosystem. I would love to see what we've been talking about, right? See the payment policy change for dialysis to encourage innovation. And I think then you would see more and more products in development. That patient dialyzed on the floor of Congress in 1972. If we were to dialyze someone there today, it would look almost the same.
Yeah.
I mean, getting more patients on home dialysis, home hemodialysis, more of the device side, wearable kidneys. There's some wonderful work being done with porcine kidney transplants. Kind of growing human organs in pigs. Right. There's been a number of transplants done across the river here at Mass General we're at the early stages of that technology, but because having organs available is one of the biggest issues to transplant, right? That's another way to have less dialysis is to have more transplants. So, I want to see that all of that science flourish, which it's starting to now. These are very capital intensive programs, and again, what's the payment path if you were successful in developing those? But I really am optimistic about the future. I know there's things that I'm fighting hard for today, both as the CEO of Akebia and a patient advocate who's been in this space for 30 years. But I'm really optimistic about the science that's out there and the opportunity to really have a huge impact on patients over the next 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been a really awesome podcast. I think there's a lot of cautious optimism about what the future holds, and so I'll put my faith in God and hope that things proceed in a direction that's best for everyone. Before we close, what would you like to leave the audience with?
I do want to leave a message of optimism here. I mean, I think you're placing your faith in the right spot, right? I mean, I think that we need God on our side here, but He helps those who help themselves, right? And I think the science that's being committed, the brain power that's being committed to developing drugs for patients with kidney disease now is better than it's ever been, certainly in my career. There are more opportunities to have impact on patients. There's clearly work to be done. But I don't think the future has ever been brighter for patients with kidney disease.
At least since 1972.
At least since 1972.
John,
thanks, Nicholas.
Thank you so much. And for everybody listening, as always, if you find conversations like this valuable, please share it with a colleague or your professional network. Subscribe to get updates of new episodes at thefdagroup.com/podcast, and follow the FDA Group on LinkedIn for industry updates and cutting edge insights. If you'd like to talk about project or resource needs, just head over to thefdagroup.com to get in touch, or feel free to connect with me personally on LinkedIn. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you all on the next rundown.